Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a quick video on how to do a relationship closing ceremony. I got a couple of questions sent in about how exactly I like to do this because I know I talk about this a lot. So I thought I would just outline how I do a relationship closing ceremony, or really one iteration of this. It's really simple and easy, and I really recommend having a practice like this for a lot of things in our lives. Anything that can stand in as a sort of rite of passage will help us shift from one energetic state to the next. And so a lot of times people struggle moving on emotionally or even attracting a new partner because they're still in energetic limbo and still kind of in that relationship. And so a closing ceremony is really helpful to complete the contract with that relationship, or even just that version of the relationship, to really step into something new. And so a lot of times when people are feeling stuck, it's just because we need to shift the energy, have a completion essentially, so that we can move to the next chapter. And that can be an energetic reason why the new chapter isn't fully coming to fruition, or why we are feeling stuck personally, or like we can't get over somebody. So it's really helpful to do this anytime you have a relationship that completes, so to speak. So, if you're going through a breakup, an uncoupling, whatever you want to call it. This is also really helpful if you are ending just the current contract with the relationship you want to continue with. So throughout a long-term relationship, it's really helpful to have these types of closing ceremonies to open up a new chapter of the dynamic. The longer you're with someone, you're both changing, and you probably are realizing you have perhaps different values that you did before, or there's a different energetic dynamic, or maybe you started getting into certain dynamics that aren't feeling that great and you want to end those. And so it's really helpful to kind of close the current contract. Like, hey, we have been really nitpicky toward each other, or we've been really off with our polarity, or we have just been not paying attention to each other, and we want to really intentionally open up the space to be very present with each other and spend more time on date nights or whatever it is. So if you're closing the current chapter of a relationship and you just want a fresh start within the current relationship, as in with the current partner, that's the same thing as basically starting a new relationship energetically. So this is really helpful for the longevity of relationships as well. It's good to acknowledge the ending of certain patterns and the opening of a new chapter, so that you're not carrying all of that energetic baggage with you for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So this can be used in a lot of different contexts, and you can do this with a partner, or you can do it without a partner. So let's say you're going through an uncoupling. You can absolutely do this alone. Usually people do this alone. Let's say, depending on the dynamic, if it's, a very conscious uncoupling and that person also wants to be a part of it, and you still have a lot of love for each other, depending on the dynamic, you could do this with partner. So I've done it both ways, just depending on, where you're at with that person and what feels good for you and what you want. Either works. So those are some of the different contexts that you can use this in. So let's go ahead and jump into the steps that I like to do. And the key thing is, this is an outline, and I've done a lot of these in my life. It's not just about romantic relationships. I've also done this with friendships, with business partnerships, with all kinds of things. And the whole point of this is a closing ceremony. A ceremony is meant to be creative, and you get to have fun with it. And so part of it is just setting up the space. Part one, setting the sacred space for the ceremony. And it's just creating that vibe, that space that helps to create a container that's saying, hey, we are going through a rite of passage here. And so setting the space is really important. It has to feel different than just sitting here and saying, okay, I'm closing this and opening this up. We want a little bit more to it. So that means you can get creative and just do whatever you want. If you want to be outside, if you want to be inside, do you want it to be in the evening? What kind of lighting do you want? What kind of candles do you want? Do you want essential oils diffusing? Do you want crystals around you? Like, do you want to pull some cards? Like, set a sacred space. Do you want to do a cacao ceremony? For me, I'm pretty predictable. I like to do ceremonies in the evening. There's something about when it gets dark. I always like to, I'll pick the essential oils I'm diffusing based on the vibe. I always have candles that are lit. I pull the crystals based on whichever crystals are speaking to me. I might in this context do some clear quartz to cleanse that, have some selenite out, some rose quartz, things like that, some tourmaline. And I have one of those projectors. You can get these on Amazon, and they project like the stars or the aurora lights or the northern lights or whatever on the ceiling. And so I like to set that up. It just creates a whole vibe. So I'm setting up the space. I have, usually kind of like spiritually music playing in the background, binaural beats playing in the background often, whatever is going to set the space. And we're just going into it like, hey, I'm attending a ceremony. So that's the first thing, is setting the space. I like to have a pot. This is usually what I do, or from outside, like you could use a fire pit or something depending on where you're at, but I usually like to use a pot, and then I always have a candle burning because I like to use candles for ceremonies like this in particular, just to have that power of transmutation. I think it's really powerful. So that's my favorite element usually to work with for these types of ceremonies. So, and then I'll get pen and paper, and I often will like to have some kind of heart opener, whether it's hibiscus tea or rose tea, or it's usually cacao. When I'm doing an evening ceremony, I love to have cacao and just, set intention with the cacao, or you can use your tea or whatever. I just like to have that water element to balance it out, but to set intention, like, hey, this evening, I'm here for this. I want to have a completion ceremony to tell me close out that chapter and to step into this new one. And just allowing some of those heart openers like the cacao to open us up to really receive the ceremony. So it really does make a difference. And also in terms of what comes forward in the ceremony, I really love to add a heart opener to that. So the first thing I like to do is express gratitude for the relationship. So everything that I've learned, all the good times, everything I went through, who I became, doing a lot of like reflections. And I'm sitting with, the big lessons I learned. I want to get really key on those. And this is where I like to have a journal, pen and paper, because I'm writing a lot of stuff down, and it just helps to crystallize it in. And so I'll write down the big lessons I learned, like my favorite moments, why I'm grateful for that, who I was when I started, and where I'm at now, the things I learned about myself, the things I learned about what I desire in partnership. I'm just reflecting and expressing gratitude. And I try to be as specific as possible, all the things that I'm grateful for. And this can be a really beautiful experience, especially if you're doing it with a partner, but even without a partner, like, it's a very emotional experience. And I will be really specific after I've gone through that. And that takes some time. Like there's room there. I will be specific about what I want to crystallize from that. Hey, so like all these things I'm grateful for and these lessons I learned from that, I want to crystallize these really great parts, these great things I had, whether it's about myself or the relationship. Even if the relationship was a shit show, there are still positive things that happened within you. And maybe it was through the end of it. Like, hey, I realized I need to speak up for myself, whatever it is, that I will write down as I'm crystallizing these big picture. And so have a very specific one of the pieces of paper is, this is what I'm taking with me, and I will write that down very, very specifically. So that's kind of the first part. And again, this just you give it room. So I've had times where this takes me 30 minutes. I've had times where this takes me an hour. I've had times where this takes 3 hours. It's just kind of like, reflection and letting that go where it needs to go, emotion, introspection, and really big lessons and big pieces of gratitude. And then the next part is what I or we, if I'm doing it with somebody, want to leave behind, like leave with the relationship. So I'll write down all the old patterns, like, hey, I was really overly in my masculine, or I was really clingy, or I was really anxious, or I was really avoidant, or I was asking way too much of you, or I was never brave enough to ask for my needs. I was closing my own throat chakra, or I was allowing myself to be treated XYZ way, or whatever it is. Patterns of, it could even be like, during this relationship, I got out of my health and wellness habits. So I'm leaving behind all of this. I mean, it could be physical. Sometimes it could be things like fatigue, because a lot of times when you're in the wrong relationship or the wrong dynamic, you'll get health issues or physical symptoms. So I'm leaving behind all this that started during the relationship. I'm leaving behind the stress. I'm leaving behind, the version of me that didn't prioritize their health and wellness, the version of me that had trouble sticking with the routines, whatever went on during that relationship, whether or not it's like because of their relationship, right? There are lots of things that happen, ways that we change, or ways that we show up. And it's not about, I was this way because of you. It's just like during this period of time, this is what happened with me, and I want to leave that behind. And it's not about blaming or anything. It's just about recognizing like patterns we were in, things that we did, things that didn't feel good. And perhaps there was a certain dynamic between the two of you that didn't feel good. Like, you know, sometimes you can really trigger each other, and triggers, it's not, you know, we're all going to trigger each other. It's not to completely avoid that, but maybe the dynamic of how you move through those triggers wasn't very good. You know, maybe there wasn't very clear communication or open-heartedness or vulnerability. So it's like, hey, I'm going to leave behind how I shut down, how I shut off my heart, anything like that. And so I'll write all those down, and one by one, I like to burn it. And the way that I do this is I put the candle inside of a big pot, and I just, you know, I write it down on a little piece of paper, and then it starts to catch fire, dip it in the candle, in the flame, and then I just drop it in the pot and I let it burn. So you can do that in a very controlled way. It doesn't make a big mess, or outside, ideally. You want to be safe. Definitely be safe with this, fire-wise. If the paper is too big, or you're trying to burn too much at once, it can get really smoky. So I just go very small and like slowly but surely, and keep it controlled in a very large pot. So I do everything inside of the pot. So, you know, be careful. Don't do anything that's, you know, or do it in a fire pit. Do it in a fire pit. So I will burn all of those things and let it go. And then we'll come to, okay, so I want to write something down on a piece of paper that represents the relationship, which could simply be like, we are closing, or I am closing the contract I had during this time period with this person. We're completing this iteration of the relationship. Thank you so much for all of your blessings, and put it in the fire and like let it transmute. And just something to really symbolize and energize, we are dissolving this. And that is a declaration that, hey, we're completing the relationship. We're completing the contract. And that's pretty much the fire part. And then I like to blow out the candle, knowing like when I blow out the candle, it's complete. I also like to have, you can either use that same piece of paper where it's what I want to crystallize in, or kind of the next one. This is where I have a journal out. I'll just write down my intentions moving forward in relationships. How I want to show up, how I want to feel, the dynamics I want, because usually that ceremony brings up some things. So, you know, we blow out the candle, we finish our cacao or whatever. And then I usually will like to pull some cards about kind of next steps, any cards about what is possible in the future, how to move forward, and that gives me something to go off of as well. And so that is like part one of the ceremony. After I've done that, and that's the big ceremony, I don't usually do this all on the same day. So that's usually what I do one evening, and then I'll usually the next day, because the energy is like very clear in that way, I'll do a meditation where I'm fully clearing that person's energy from my energy field, and I am completing that contract energetically. So I will do some energy work. You can do a meditation just to cut all of the cords connected to that person, cut all the cords connected to the contract with that specific relationship, that version of the relationship, clear out all of their energy out of like my body, my womb space. I'm just clearing all that, sending all of their energy back to them, calling all my energy back into me, cutting all of the cords, any patterns or thoughts or whatever that I picked up where I'm still plugged into them. I will pull all of that out. What a lot of people don't realize is how many of their thoughts or feelings or even patterns are the other person's. When we're in romantic relationships, we really energetically meld. And so after we've done the fire ceremony, it makes it a lot easier to pull all of that out of your energy field. And then you can really realize what's yours and call all of your energy back in. So it could be confusing to know whose is what. So I definitely clear out all the sexual energy. I complete all those contracts energetically. And when I'm in there energetically, I'm also checking on, is there anything else I was meant to learn? Any other messages from this relationship? Anything else I need to finish on my side to fully complete it out? That's just kind of like the final touch. Sometimes new information kind of comes forward, but I'm mainly just clearing all of that out of my energy fields. And then I will tap into kind of like the next iteration of me, and in the next chapter I'll do a kind of like a future timeline meditation or energy work and calibrate in and feel into the frequency of the next contract that wants to open up. And sometimes that's very specific. Sometimes I'll get information about the person and when it's going to happen and blah, blah, blah. And these are the themes. And sometimes it's kind of just an energy form where I can feel into this is what's coming and this is what's next. And when I do that, I will usually get some information or some feelings or have some realizations about, oh, I also want to add this into my intention list. And I'll take the list that I made in the ceremony about what I want to move forward with, and I'll add to that based on that future timeline meditation. And I'll just really kind of crystallize, hey, opening up a new contract, and these are the pieces that I want. So in that space of I'm doing energy work on myself, I'm working in my field, I will officially open the new chapter. Again, get any information about anything I need to do or how I need to show up to step into that, and make it happen. And if it's with the same person, maybe it's transmuting the relationship with someone you've been in a relationship for a long time that you're going to continue with. It's like, hey, we're closing this iteration and then we're going to open up this chapter and these are my intentions. And I like to set that in that meditation space, in that energetic space. And then I close up and there we go. So that's the outline of how I do relationship closing ceremonies. There's kind of two parts for me. Some more resources around this, definitely check out. We have our free Ahai energy healing and clearing. Put the link for that in the description below so that can help you clear out your field. But I have specific cord cutting meditations and future timeline visualization meditations and guided energy work that you can use in the membership Next Level You so that you can do all of these processes. And that is why I have that membership, so I can share with you all of these actual recordings, guided energy work. So you just press play and make sure it gets happen. So it's a great way to do energy work at home for yourself and get guided through that, and just makes it really easy. And these are, I make these recordings based on exactly what I do, and then I use the recordings. So I use all the same stuff I share. So I'll put the link for that in the show notes below if you want, those cord cutting meditations, those future timeline meditations, that guided energy work. And that way you can clear out your field, call all of your energy back to you, and open up a new contract. All right. So let me know how this lands for you. If you have any other specific things that you like to do in your relationship closing ceremonies, feel free to leave a comment below. Like I said, every ceremony is different, and it's really cool to just follow any divine inspiration you have. If there's any certain touches or things you feel guided to do, this is a general outline, but all of my ceremonies are very different. And you just really want to let yourself flow with what feels intuitively correct. There's no right or wrong way. It's just about that really, really clear intention and kind of energetic declaration that we're closing this and we're moving into this next phase. So leave a thumbs up if this was helpful. I would love to hear that. And, if anything really stood out, leave a comment below, and I would love to hear about that as well. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss any future videos popping in regularly here, which is always fun. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I will chat with you in my next video. Bye.